My stepmother convinced my dad to rewrite his will, cutting me out completely. So I left to start my own business. A few years later, the unexpected happened and changed everything. I will tell you how everything unfolded. First, let me thank you for your continuous support. If you love stories like this one, support us by subscribing to this channel and comment where you are watching us from. It will be great to hear from you. Now let's jump into the details of what happened. When people ask me what I do, I tell them I build things from scratch: companies, systems, lives. But I used to build trust. That was the first thing I learned to craft, brick by invisible brick, especially with my father. For years, I thought he and I had the kind of bond that could withstand anything: divorce, remarriage, even disappointment. But it turned out that all it took was one person with a smile that was just a little too bright and a voice that dripped sweet poison to unravel everything between us. That person was my stepmother. Her name was Carol. I called her that even after she married my dad, and she hated it. She wanted Mom, or at least Ma, but I couldn't make myself say it. Not when I remembered the woman who used to tuck me in at night and leave little sticky notes on my lunch napkins. Carol was the opposite. Polished, polite, and strategic. She could say more with one raised eyebrow than most people could with a full speech. And she made it clear from day one that I was a complication, not a child she wanted to love. I was 26 when I overheard them talking about the will. It was late, and I had come home from work early for once. The office had a plumbing issue, so I thought I'd surprise Dad with dinner, steak from that place he loved, and a bottle of wine. I let myself in and heard voices in the study. The door wasn't closed all the way. I just think Carol was saying that it's time we talk about the future. Realistically, we need to protect what's ours. Dad's voice was slower, uncertain. She doesn't need it, John. She's smart, capable. She'll make her own way. But your legacy? You built this life with me now. Don't you want to make sure the right people are taken care of? There was a long silence. I didn't breathe. I suppose, he said. She's always been independent. That was it. No fight. No hesitation. No reminder that I was his daughter. Just a quiet surrender to convenience. When I left the house that night, I left the wine and the steak on the kitchen counter. I didn't say anything. I didn't cry. I drove to my apartment, sat on my bed for hours, and didn't sleep at all. By the morning, my mind was made up. I wasn't going to wait around and fight for crumbs at a table that used to be mine. I quit my job 2 weeks later. I had some savings, a few contacts, and a stubborn belief that I could make something of myself without their name propping me up. I told my dad over coffee on a Saturday. He barely looked up from his cup. Carol told me you might overreact, he said. I laughed. This isn't an overreaction, Dad. This is a boundary. He didn't follow up. He didn't call after I left. And Carol? She probably poured herself a celebratory mimosa and moved my photo to the attic. But I wasn't angry, not yet. At first, I was just numb, like something in me had gone quiet to protect itself. I didn't know then what would come years later, how illness would drag everything back into the light. But standing in that kitchen, hearing the click of my own heels as I walked away from the only family I'd ever known, I realized something. The last name I carried might be his, but the future? That was going to be mine. The morning I moved out for good, it wasn't raining like it does in movies. No symbolic storm, no tearful soundtrack. Just clear skies, 72 degrees, and the quiet hum of my neighbor's lawnmower 2 houses down. But inside me, it felt like a tornado had flattened everything I thought I knew. My life wasn't a clean break. It was a slow splintering, and by the time I realized how deep the cracks went, it was too late to patch them. I didn't have much. Just a few suitcases, 2 worn-out cardboard boxes from my last apartment, and my laptop. I remember looking around my bedroom in my dad's house, my childhood posters still on the wall, a faded ribbon from a spelling bee I won in 6th grade taped to the mirror, and thinking, this place was never going to be mine again. Carol had started redecorating the moment she moved in, except for my room. She left that alone, like a little museum she never planned to visit. The hardest part wasn't leaving the house. It was realizing that no one was going to ask me to stay. I thought Dad might say something. That maybe, just maybe, he'd look up from his crossword puzzle, see me dragging a suitcase through the hallway, and remember that I was his daughter. But he didn't even come out of his study. Carol was the only one who watched me. She stood by the stairs in one of her crisp, white blouses, holding a cup of tea with both hands like it was some kind of trophy. "Where will you go?" she asked, almost bored. "I'll figure it out," I said. "That's what capable people do. Remember?" She didn't flinch. Just gave me a smile that was more pity than smugness, which somehow made it worse. That night, I slept on the floor of a friend's spare room with a towel for a pillow. And still, for the first time in weeks, I felt something like peace. Not comfort, peace. Like my heart finally had permission to stop trying to prove itself to people who saw me as an inconvenience. I didn't have a business plan yet. I didn't have investors, a team, or a fancy name. But I had an idea, a platform that helped small, family-owned shops streamline their inventory and customer service. I had seen firsthand how many of them were struggling with outdated systems, and I knew I could help. The irony wasn't lost on me. I wanted to build something to support other people's legacies while mine had just been erased from a will. Every day after that was a quiet battle. I'd wake up early, research, send cold emails, get no replies, revise, send more. I worked part-time at a bookstore to pay rent, coded late into the night, and read more business blogs than I care to admit. But it was mine, all of it. Every failure, every tiny win. No one handed me anything, and no one could take it away. There were nights when I missed my dad more than I expected. I'd picture him in the study, the desk lamp casting shadows on his face as he read. I'd wonder if he thought about me, if he ever regretted letting me walk out without a fight. But I never reached out, because I knew that if someone can erase you with a signature, they never really saw you in the first place. My company, Anchor and Arbor, launched small. Just a handful of clients, mostly through word of mouth. But word traveled. And people trusted me, because I understood what it meant to hold something fragile and personal in your hands, to fight for it when no one else would. 3 years later, I was running a 6-person team. We had real traction, and we just closed a deal with a regional chain that boosted our revenue by nearly 40%. I should have been celebrating. But then I got the message. It was a simple email from Carol's account. Subject: your father body. He's sick. He's asking for you. I stared at it for a long time, my heart thudding like a drum I couldn't quiet. Not please come. Not we need you. Just that. Short. Cold. And suddenly, everything I thought I'd buried started clawing its way back to the surface. Because whether I liked it or not, I wasn't just someone who built things. I was still someone who'd been broken. I didn't respond to the email right away. I let it sit in my inbox like a bad memory I wasn't ready to reread. Every time I opened my laptop, there it was unread, glaring, bold. A digital ghost waiting for acknowledgement. I told myself I was too busy. The Q3 review needed finishing. One of our engineers had just given notice, and I had a pitch deck to prep for an upcoming investor meeting. But the truth was simpler. I didn't want to care. But I did. I found myself staring out my office window longer than usual, watching cars go by and wondering if my dad ever thought about me when he couldn't sleep. Did he regret it? Did he even realize what he'd given up, or was Carol's version of family enough for him? When the second message came, this time from a hospital domain, I opened it immediately. Patient: John Marshall. Stage 4 liver failure. Admitted for palliative care. Next of kin: Carol Marshall. Immediate family contact not on file. Not on file. It was official. I'd been scrubbed from his paperwork the same way I'd been erased from his will. Still, something in me cracked. I shut my laptop, got in my car, and drove. I didn't call ahead. I didn't tell anyone at the office. I just drove like I was being pulled by a rope I couldn't cut. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and resignation. I gave the nurse my name, and she paused. "Oh," she said, "you're the daughter." It landed like a punch. I hadn't been called that in years. She walked me to his room, and before she even opened the door, I heard the familiar hum of the oxygen machine. That rhythmic hiss and puff that always sounds more like time slipping away than anything mechanical. The door creaked open, and there he was, smaller than I remembered, gray overtaking what used to be a full head of sandy hair. His skin was sallow, eye-sunken, but when he turned his head and saw me, something flickered. "Ellie?" he rasped. I froze. Carol was sitting beside him, dressed like she'd just stepped out of a boardroom, not a hospital room. She didn't look surprised to see me. If anything, she looked smug. Like she knew I'd come. Like she always knew I would. I'll give you two a moment, she said, standing up slowly. I'll be just down the hall. When the door closed behind her, I sat down at the edge of the bed, my back straight, hands in my lap. Didn't expect to see you, he said. Yeah, I figured. He coughed, a wet, rattling sound, and wiped his mouth with a trembling hand. I'm glad you came, he added. Are you? I said. I didn't mean for it to come out sharp, but I didn't stop it either. His eyes closed. I messed up. I know. You didn't mess up, I said. You made a choice. He didn't argue. That almost hurt more. I thought. Carol said you'd be fine. That you didn't need. Carol said a lot of things, I interrupted. And you believed all of them. A long silence stretched between us. Machines beeped. The oxygen hissed. My heart beat hard against my ribs. I wanted to reach out, he whispered. Then why didn't you? I didn't know how. I stood up, overwhelmed by 1,000 emotions that didn't have names. Rage, grief, love, maybe, buried under everything else. You always knew how to reach me, Dad. You just didn't want to. His eyes welled with tears then, and for the first time in years, I saw my father, the man who taught me how to ride a bike, who stayed up helping me with math homework, who hugged me too tight the day my mom died. That man was still in there, but buried under layers of fear, pride, and manipulation. Layers Carol had helped build. I walked to the door and paused. I'm not here for her, I said. And I'm not here for the will. I came because I needed to see for myself what was left of the man I loved. That's all. When I stepped out into the hallway, Carol was waiting. She smiled like a snake in pearls. You'll stay then. I looked her dead in the eye. No. I came to say goodbye. And just like that, I turned and walked away. I didn't intend to go back. But 2 days later, I found myself standing outside the hospital again, coffee cooling in my hand, staring at the automatic doors like they were a portal to everything I'd spent years trying to outrun. I didn't know them anything, Carol especially, but something in me still felt unfinished. I needed to say the words I hadn't said. Not for them, for me. When I stepped into the room, Dad was asleep. His breathing was heavier now, labored. The machines had multiplied since the first visit. Tubes. IVs. That persistent beep, beep, beep like a metronome marking time we no longer had. Carol was there, perched in the same chair, tapping away on her phone. She didn't look up when I entered. Didn't think you'd come back, she said, her tone clipped. I didn't come for you. That got her attention. She looked at me, really looked, and I saw something shift in her expression. Something tighter than arrogance. Maybe fear. I don't need this right now, she muttered. No, I said, walking slowly to the other side of the bed. You don't. But I do. She stood, adjusting her cardigan, and headed for the door. But I didn't let her go so easily this time. Carol, I said, stopping her mid-step. I know you convinced him to rewrite the will. She froze, turned. Her mouth parted slightly. Excuse me. I heard you, I said, voice steady. That night in the study. You said he needed to protect what was yours. And he agreed. You erased me. And you didn't even have the decency to lie about it. She blinked, caught off guard by the directness. But Carol never stayed off balance for long. He made his own decisions, she snapped. You think I put a gun to his head? I simply reminded him that you were always going to leave. And look, you did. No, I said, stepping closer. I left because you made staying unbearable. Because he stopped standing up for me the second you walked through the door. I wasn't part of your little future plan, and you made sure he saw me as a burden, not his child. Her face flushed. I gave him stability. You gave him attitude. I let out a breathless laugh. You gave him ultimatums. I gave him love. She didn't respond. She just stood there, jaw tight, eyes burning. You've won, Carol, I said. You got the house, the money, the power of attorney. Congratulations. But you'll never have what I had. You'll never be his daughter. And with that, I turned my back to her and faced the man in the bed. His eyelids fluttered, but he didn't wake. I leaned down, brushed his hair back gently, and whispered, I loved you, even when you forgot how to love me back. When I left the room, Carol didn't follow. She stayed there, surrounded by beeping machines and her silent trophy of a husband. And I? I walked down the corridor, past the nurses, past the waiting families, and out into the cool afternoon air. It wasn't triumph I felt. It wasn't closure either. It was something quieter, cleaner. It was freedom. The first message came a week after I left the hospital. Then another. Then a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. An uncle I hadn't heard from in years suddenly interested in keeping the family together. Word had spread fast. Dad wasn't doing well. His will was final. And I had made a scene. She's grieving, one message said, as if Carol were the victim. Whatever happened, you're still his daughter, another chimed in, like blood was enough to erase betrayal. Just let it go, someone finally said. You'll regret this when he's gone. But I didn't regret it. Not even a little. Because I had been the one to walk away, not out of spite, not out of pride, but out of self-preservation. And if there was one thing those messages had in common, it was their total refusal to acknowledge that I had been wronged, that I had been erased. They wanted me to be the bigger person. They wanted me to swallow the pain quietly, like I always had, and return just in time to be useful emotionally, logistically, or legally. But I wasn't that person anymore. What surprised me most was how calm I felt saying no. No, I would not come back to help manage his care. No, I would not assist with the estate paperwork. No, I would not contribute to a funeral fund. Carol had drained my father of his strength and loyalty. She could deal with the paperwork now. That was her prize. That was her choice. The business kept me busy, but my mind wandered. At night, I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying those final days in the hospital like a film I couldn't turn off. I saw the shape of my father's face in the shadows. I heard his voice in the hum of my air conditioner. I remembered being a little girl with her hand in his, crossing busy streets, always feeling safe. But those memories, as sweet as they were, didn't excuse what had followed. And no amount of nostalgia was going to let me walk back into that house with open arms and a bowed head. The day he died, I found out through an obituary Carol posted online. No phone call, no email, just a sterile paragraph next to a picture I didn't recognize. Him in a tuxedo at some fundraiser, not the dad I remembered in old flannel shirts with smudges of oil on his hands. I stared at that image for a long time, not crying, just still. There was no mention of me in the write-up, no survived by his daughter, just Carol, a few business associates, and some distant cousins, as if I'd never existed, as if I'd never been part of his life. People asked if I planned to attend the funeral. I said no. You'll regret it, one colleague whispered. But they didn't understand. I had already attended the funeral years ago, the day I overheard him rewriting his will, the day I realized he chose peace with Carol over loyalty to me. That was the real goodbye. Everything after that was paperwork and ritual. Instead, I spent that morning alone. I closed my laptop, turned off my phone, and walked to the park near my apartment. I sat on a bench and watched the sun spill over the pond. I thought about how healing doesn't always look like forgiveness. Sometimes, it looks like absence, like refusal. I wrote his name in my journal, just his name. Then I drew a single line beneath it, a full stop. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe without holding on to hope that maybe, just maybe, he'd come back to himself. Dear Dad, I never sent this letter. I wrote it the week after your funeral, tucked it into my drawer, and read it once every year since. Not because I was waiting for peace, but because sometimes grief doesn't scream, it whispers. You were already gone the day you stopped seeing me as your daughter. The moment you chose convenience over connection. That night I overheard you and Carol, your voice so careful, hers so persuasive. I realized I'd been building a home in someone else's house. A guest. A problem to manage. A footnote in a life that once revolved around me. Still, I missed you. I missed the way you used to sing while changing the oil in your truck. I missed how your eyes would crinkle at the corners when I got an A in school. I missed the man who once told me I could be anything as long as I showed up and told the truth. That man wouldn't have let me walk out without a word. That man wouldn't have handed over the keys to someone who only saw me as a threat to her security. But you did. And for a long time, I thought that meant something was wrong with me, that I wasn't enough, that if I'd worked harder, been more agreeable, less outspoken, you would have chosen differently. Now I know better. What you did wasn't about me. It was about fear, about guilt, about the easy way out. And Carol? She gave you the version of a future where loyalty didn't cost anything. No arguments, no inconvenient truths, just clean lines and a quiet house. You gave her everything I was supposed to inherit, and she still needed more my absence. But here's what you couldn't take. You couldn't take my name. You couldn't take the strength I found in starting over. The business I built from scratch, the team I grew with care. You couldn't take my voice, which you once said was too loud and now speaks in boardrooms with clarity and conviction. You couldn't take my kindness, though you made me question it. And you couldn't take my memory of us before she arrived, when we were still us. I've made peace with what happened, not because I've forgiven it, but because I've outgrown the need for your apology. That's what boundaries do. They protect what we refuse to let pain reshape. This letter stays with me. It's not for you. It never was. It's for the girl who once stood in your study, hearing her own erasure behind a cracked door. It's for the woman she became when no one showed up to stop her from walking away. It's for the legacy I'm building, one that starts and ends with truth. Goodbye, Dad. Ellie, I sealed the letter in an envelope and placed it in the back of a drawer. No address. No stamp. Just closure. Real closure. Weeks later, Carol tried to reach me again. Something about unresolved items from the estate, logistics, financial matters. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to resolve. Sometimes, the loudest way to speak is with silence. Sometimes, the most powerful inheritance is knowing when to walk away. And I did. Not broken. Not bitter. Just free. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment and share your thoughts. Have you ever had to choose yourself over family? Your experience matters. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more real-life stories about betrayal, healing, and the power of setting boundaries. See you soon in the next story.